hello, por favor. ¿Pueden tomar su sitio, por favor? Can you have your seat, please? We are going to start, por favor. Sí, un poquito de silencio, por favor. Could be a little bit quiet, please. We're going to start.
It's here.
I'm curious.
I found it. Let me tell you the story. This is where we came from. We came from a torn continent, destroyed by 2 world wars, impoverished, afloat, disoriented. But the European ideal started as a way to bring peace and stability to this continent, trying for the first time in our history to create a union of different people and culture on equal terms, a project of bringing people together, regardless of their race, gender, religion, culture. And we arrived to a point where the European Union created prosperity. Economic growth was seen as a model for other parts of the world, based on values such as democracy, tolerance, justice, human rights. Things seemed to be going in the right direction. So what went wrong?
Economic crisis, high unemployment, persistent low growth. The resurgence of populism, radicalization of society as a whole, the rise of terrorist groups who want to cause death and destruction. The future ahead seems dark sometimes, when we just focus on this news, on what pulls us apart, not what brings us together. Is this the future we want? Is this the future we see for ourselves and our children? Shouldn't we try to find a different way, tell a different story to the rest of the world? Shouldn't we tell ourselves a different story, a brighter one? A story of hope, of possibilities, of joy and happiness.
This is the story of a journey. This is the story of a new path. This is a story of a path towards a better Europe. A story of lives, like the ones of you and me, who want simple things, like peace, a job, a community who cares, an education for our children, a place where our taxes contribute to building a better society, and for a union of equality, justice, fairness.
This is why we need to debate, discuss,
find new solutions.
together.
Juntos.
Společně.
Insieme.
Karto.
Razem. Skupaj.
Together. Zusammen.
Sam.
Juntos. Zajedno.
Juntos.
Ensemble.
Buenas tardes, buena vesprada, good afternoon everyone in the online community and welcome to the Together event in Valencia. Por problemas de agenda, vamos a dar la palabra a la jefa de la delegación española en el Parlamento Europeo, a Irache García, porque se tiene que ir y después continuamos con la presentación. Irache, por favor. De nada.
Dear colleagues, welcome everybody. Thank you for to be here because for us, for the Social Democrats, it's very important to have this opportunity. We want to speak together. We want to find a solution for Europe together. I will speak in Spanish now, maybe you will need a translation. Okay. Muchísimas gracias por asistir.
Thank you ever so much for coming to this act, for the meeting between Socialists and Democrats under the slogan, Together. That is how we want to work in the coming times, together, to build the new Europe that will bring hope back to the men and women and children of Europe and back to our towns and municipalities. So I welcome you from the Spanish delegation and also on behalf of the Spanish Socialist Party. We're aware that Europe stopped being that dream that so many of us believed in when we went through some hard times in this country, lack of freedom and lack of democracy. Europe was the place of freedom, of opportunities, of equality, of democracy. And unfortunately, this last decade has become that tool that through the policies has turned its back on the men and women who most needed us in Europe. And that is why today it is more necessary than ever that the project of the socialists in Europe has to be a shared project that has the voice of each and every one of you who believe in and trust that Europe is still the solution. We have said it on many occasions. At this time, populisms and the extreme right, nationalisms, we say we need to have a critical spirit and mindset, of course, but we must understand that Europe cannot be the problem. Europe has to be the solution, but a different Europe. A Europe in which the social pillar, where the rights of the workers, where social policies, where freedoms and opportunities have again a place in the forefront that they never should have lost. And therefore this initiative from Social Democrats aims to bring light to all areas in Europe, to be able to share opinions, to listen, and to bring a firm proposal about the Europe that we want to live in and what is the Europe that we want to leave to our future generations. That's why we're going to work very intensely today and also in our day-to-day lives. The Socialist Party is very aware that we need to strengthen European social democracy. So we are going to open up a dialogue with all of the parts of society, with all the issues and matters that you want to bring up, to talk about employment policy, financial policy, fighting against climate change, how we can deal with refugee crisis, how we are available to respond in a much more adequate way to the challenges that Europe of the 21st century is up it, and bring hope back to the men and women who unfortunately have lost some of their faith and trust in us. Europe is a solution to our problems, a Europe that looks to working with people and bring hope back to them. Thank you very much. Welcome once again to Europe Together, a conference that European Socialists and Democrats have inaugurated here in Valencia so that we can debate together, in particular about how cohesion policies can help us to improve the lives of citizens. If there's one thing we're sure about, it is that investing in Europe is about investing in its people. Many European directors will be talking to us this afternoon about how investment funds are invested and also what are the challenges coming up that we will be facing in the future regarding cohesion policies. With the aim of establishing an open dialogue with citizens on the progressive Europe that we want, but together is not aimed at being a unidirectional conference. We would like you to interact with the speakers, that you reveal your doubts, that you be skeptical, so that together we can design the best possible future Europe. It is the end of a time in which only deciders at the top decide. It's time for us citizens to bring our doubts and questions to the floor. And it is Europe that knows how it needs to improve. If you didn't know this, I will just share with you. The event is being streamed live and is being followed by about 500 people through the web platform, through YouTube channel, and through the European Socialist Democratic channels. So for all of you who are at home and you here, we encourage you to participate with us through social networks, share your comments with us, and also to speakers using the hashtag Europe Together. In the information document that you have received, you have a draft on the future of cohesion policy, which will be closed this afternoon. And this will be used to help politicians to decide in the next few years on how to move towards a more integrated Europe. So the idea is that you add your comments to this draft, and at the end of the day, Isabel Toma, Vice President, and Catiusia Marini, President of the Committee of the Regions, present this, and these will be submitted to vote. The Europe that we want and the Europe that we defend for is this one. With the exit of the UK from the European Union, a period of uncertainty has arisen, but we must confront this with courage. Now we have the opportunity to defend the European project, and we cannot afford to lose any more time. As of 2019, a new chapter in the history of the European Union is starting. That is the aim of this seminar today, and that's the challenge of the European Socialists and Democrats. Welcome to Europe Together. And who could be better to open this afternoon session than Katia? Welcome to Valencia. Thank you. Good afternoon to all of you. Thank you. And this is the second part of our seminar today, which will be continuing with the Together session, which we began on another occasion, as a moment of two-way dialogue. So we are looking forward to the contribution not only of the speakers, who we thank for being here, qualified and important speakers, but also of all of you who are present here at this meeting. And we would like to do this with the aim of understanding together, from a perspective of the cities and the regions, to see if we can contribute some quality ideas in terms of the construction of the European Socialist Party program that will be presenting themselves to the elections of 2019 for the change in Europe, and if it would be possible to hear some perspectives and opinions for this trajectory that will continue until 2019. Today we want to aim this towards a tool that has always represented a way of building construction policies that bring Europe closer to citizens. That's the cohesion policy, which is exemplary for local authorities and in the regions in Europe. We have always given a central role to cohesion policy for investment, to qualify our cities and improve the lives of our citizens. In this interaction with you today, we would like to understand how cohesion policy, born and conceived as an instrument or tool aimed at reducing inequalities and distances between European regions and also within our own communities, when faced with a challenge which has come after the crisis of this past decade, whether it is possible that the cohesion policy can really truly be a useful fundamental policy to continue acting against social, economical inequalities and territorial discontinuities. So the progressive forces must address the matter of this aim to be achieved. So we are going to be speaking about cohesion policy with a perspective from the different territories, and you'll see in the two work sessions what has been achieved and what has been carried out in local communities and what citizens have perceived from these action tools in their own territories as tools which were born from the integration policies on a European level. I would like to testify not only as a president of the Socialist Group, but also as president of a region which does not have an outlet to the sea. The region that I am president of is one which has used structural funds to a great degree to reduce levels of competitivity, and especially in more recent years, digital technology to help with energetic transition and to change the level of education and vocational training to face matters which have affected us greatly, such as reducing risk to natural calamities and climate change. It makes sense to continue investing as European regions, and that is why we need a cohesion policy. I believe that that is the theme that we need to go deeper into and imagine what the European policy will be post-2020 and attempt to correct, redress what has not worked. I'm thinking, for example, on how we could reduce the bureaucratic charge which is connected with this policy, how to orientate ourselves towards quality of results, or modify the principle to designate structural funds not only on the base of an indicator, which of course is fundamental and important, but not fully comprehensive as the GDP. Also talking about quality and the levels of progress reached, not only with numbers, but also to see how the cohesion policy has changed and improved the quality of life of citizens and the opportunities that have been offered to them. So to see a little bit what this perception is all about, we need to build up the trust again in Europe and its communities, and to see how local territorials can become important references for rebuilding this trust and for building policies that make visible the action of Europe over local communities, bearing in mind also larger phenomena such as migration or those connected with social security and loss of employment posts as a consequence of the crisis. Through the session this afternoon, we are going to address or try and bring a useful contribution as socialists for the construction of a political and programmed policy to face the 2019 elections. Our highest ambitions is to understand if our values, which guide us, especially in terms of equality of opportunities, in particular for the youngest generations, are giving response, and if we can find an answer in the tools that are being applied, and whether these tools could represent, as the cohesion policy aims, if they can represent one of the axes in order to maintain a relationship of trust and confidence between citizens and European institutions. So we're here this afternoon especially to listen, and we are awaiting the contributions from our speakers and also the viewpoints from the wider public audience. And together we want to build our manifesto and a first contribution that we wish to bring to this working session this afternoon, and that we will illustrate at the end of the session. Thank you, and have a good work session. Thank you, Valencia. I'm warning you that the program has a very large number of speakers with very little time, so I'm going to be very strict with the times. From now on, Immaculada, please try and be a little briefer. We are now handing over to the Deputy Immaculada. Good afternoon to all of you, and thank you so much for this great initiative called Europe Together. And of course, especially welcome to my land, Valencia. I'm very proud and satisfied that Valencia has been chosen to celebrate this gathering, for there is no doubt that it is not a gratuitous choice. And surely it is in recognition of the great work carried out by our President Chimo Puig to change our image in Europe. And I can vouch for this. When I came to Europe in July 2014, the image that the Valencian community actually conveyed the situation that we were living then. And the Valencian community, the image was not very positive. There was much talk of the corruption and the misleading numbers in our deficit, and we have all had to live with the consequences of this, and also by going against the rules. So we have now moved from that image to have a Valencian community whose institutions are valued, appreciated, and respected by their honesty, their transparency, their commitment and loyalty to the European institutions. And I would like to point out that it is not in vain that our president, Ximo Puig, is the only autonomous president, together with the president of the Basque community, who have had a meeting with the president. I would also like to point out that our group has also chosen Valencia for this act to be celebrated, because it is no doubt a recognition of the Socialist Party, and in particularly to the Valencian Socialists for our pro-European vocation, for being a party that has decided to fulfill an active role regarding the challenges that we are facing in the 21st century. I would like to thank all of you who have enabled this event to take place. There have been many, many, many hours of work, coordination, and effort put into this debate being able to take place today. So thank you very much to all of you. Thank you to Irache, who has had to leave in a hurry. Irache has made a huge effort to be here with us today because her schedule requires her to be in Valladolid. And I would like to thank Sandra, our spokesperson at the town hall here in Valencia. Thank you to Karl-Heinz, who yesterday I had the honor of meeting and having a very interesting, gratifying, and useful conversation, which I hope is only the beginning of a long and caring relationship, friendship together. Thank you to Katiuska. It is a great honor having met you and to welcome you here in Valencia, as well as all of the representatives from all the regions in Europe. The European Union, we have mentioned it and said it over and over, and I will say it once again. Europe is facing a very complex situation. The crisis, the extreme austerity policies that have been applied, rise in inequality, and management of the migration crisis have made citizens draw distance from Europe. Brexit, with no doubt, is the maximum exponent of all of this. The uncertainty provoked by Brexit, however, is an opportunity to reconsider where we are heading, and above all, what European Union do we want to achieve a better future, and how we are going to do this. We need to bring Europe closer to the citizens so that citizens get back to feeling Europe is theirs. And for that, there are two things we need to do. We need to vindicate Europe, and we need to improve Europe. Because Europe is necessary. Without the Union, we would not be what we are today. No country has the power or the strength or the capacity needed to, on their own, confront the great challenges that we're coming up against. We are strong only if we are together, united. And we have to improve Europe. And for that, we are here today to design, draw up, and share the Social Democrat project that is aimed at integration and building a stronger Europe, to develop a new social agenda, and to put people at the heart of policies, and to put an end to all inequality. And finally, I would like to remind you that the upcoming autonomous and local elections will also be the next European elections. Social democracy has to be conceived as the engine of change of that more united and social Europe, so that all Europeans once again feel proud to be a part of it, to recover the capacity, credibility, and the trust. Especially, we have to recover the hope of our citizens in a political Europe. Equality without states, without regions, and without citizens in second place. And in this new phase, we socialists are here, gathered together to debate one of the most important themes that contribute to build a European Union that is based on solidarity, the cohesion funds, to move towards greater solidarity between the regions of Europe. Valencia is opening its doors to us today to debate on the future of the cohesion policy, and I'm very sure we're going to have a wonderful debate as we have the best speakers and the best participants. Thank you.
Debido a un problema
due to schedule problems, Chimo is now in a meeting with the European Commissioner. He will join us later in the round table about European policies after 2020. Let's continue now with our program. Cohesion policies, as you know, and as Irache said, account for a third of the European Union's budget. They are the most effective mechanism in boosting investment in many European regions. That's why Europe Together sought to have a specific meeting to explain everything about cohesion funds and to explain some of the initiatives, some of the most important projects that have been funded in recent years or are currently funded with such funds. Europe invests thousands of millions in member states, and we citizens sometimes ignore or don't know that the school next door or the hospital near us has been funded with European funds. In the morning, some of you visited the harbor or the Albufera Lake. Both of them, being very different projects, have been awarded cohesion funding. Representatives from 7 countries, Germany, France, Spain, the Arctic region, will give us a snapshot, an overview about the countries and the added value that structural funds brought to their countries and how they contributed to economic progress. I'll introduce them in a minute. Please be as brief as possible, and don't forget that we want to encourage interactions with the audience. So you all have 5 minutes. Just give us a quick snapshot, the picture of the contribution of the European Union in your countries, and try to convince us for us to go to your country or your regions on holidays next year. The Deputy Mayor of Valencia is the first speaker. Right, good evening to all of you. My name is Sandra Gomez. I am the Deputy Mayor of Valencia. I chose El Cabanyal as the perfect example of the importance of European funds to strengthen social and territorial cohesion in some areas. El Cabanyal is a quarter, a district by the sea. In fact, it was a village, formerly a village of Valencia. El Cabanyal has been a source of inspiration of many renowned artists, such as Sorolla. Its heritage value is very important, and it's got its own identity. In 1993, the whole neighborhood of El Cabanyal was declared public heritage. In spite of such class, the local government at the time, a conservative government, made a decision to put in place a project which consisted of a huge road, a huge avenue right from the very center of Valencia to the seaside, which meant destroying, demolishing a great section of El Cabanyal quarter. After 10 years of legal lawsuits, citizens struggling and protests, and thanks to the efforts made by the neighbors, the plan was stopped. But the previous government still wanted to continue the project and therefore applied a mobbing strategy to the district, and the neighbors, most of them, had to flee their homes and move elsewhere in the city. As a result of all such measures, the district, one of the districts with the highest quality heritage in Valencia, became one of the most degraded in the city. In fact, up to 2015, in El Cabanyal, there was almost nothing but barren land and plots of houses that had been evicted, homes of families that had fled the district, or houses that had been squatted illegally. With the change in government in the Council of Valencia and in the region of Valencia, both administrations set their goals, including the ambitious objective of bringing life back to El Cabanyal. To that end, we decided to include and involve the European project, and so we prepared a proposal for funding under the call for sustainable development, the EDUSI initiative, so that the European Union could help us refurbish the neighborhood. The process was fully participatory, including all the entities present in the neighborhood, neighbors associations, educational organizations, and we then submitted our proposal in Europe. And good news, we got awarded maximum funding. El Cabanyal will receive 30 million euros co-funded by the Council and the European Union. With the funding, we seek to refurbish physically and socially, but also economically, a district in Valencia which is absolutely unique. How are we doing that? How are we to do that? Well, we will provide the district with services, basic services which the district did not have, as simple as that, such as daycare centers, infant schools, cultural centers. We will refurbish historic buildings such as the Fishermen's Exchange. El Cabanyal and its neighbors were neglected by the previous government. Thanks to help from the European Union, we will help neighbors to stay hopeful and to keep their neighborhood alive. Thanks to the support of the European Union, their district will be refurbished, renewed, and given back to its legal owners for it to become a place where people can coexist together, can live together, making Valencia a unique city, a city with a sailor's district, which is part of the tourist offer, I should say. Thank you.
Together on Facebook and Twitter, and that you can leave your comments on social networks to close the declaration with your contribution. Continuamos.
Right, let's continue with Thuringia in Germany. Babette Winter.
And Patricia Roth, sorry.
Sie kommen gleich. Ja, sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, liebe Freunde.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about Thuringia's experience and project, but I suppose I'd rather have Patricia Ross, who comes from the Chamber of Commerce, explain the project. Of course, this is a bit of tourism advertising. We're going to invite you to come to Thuringia. I didn't bring the photographs, but please believe me, our region is worth a visit. Our region is part of former Federal Republic. In the 1990s, we went through difficult patches in time with outbursts of nationalism, xenophobia. Our region has really benefited from being a member state. That's why I encourage you in Valencia to use structural funds. Structural funds helped us develop infrastructures, but we also use the social fund. Though, obviously, this has helped us reduce our unemployment rates from 19 to 6%, thanks to all the resources and funding given to us by the European Union. Right, what have we done? Or we managed to reduce the unemployment level. We also created apprenticeship positions, and some youngsters, some young people who had difficult access to the work market, well, we tried to integrate them. The same applies to migrants and dropouts. How do you integrate all these people, all these young people? I would like to give the floor to Patricia now. We have very little time, but I do encourage you to ask questions later to Patricia. Thank you, Dr. Vinta. I am honored to be here in Valencia to present our project about vocational education, vocational training. I am a member of the Chamber of Commerce of Edinburgh. I run the project. Chambers of Commerce in Germany are public organizations, and they are allocated a number of duties, including dual vocational education, teaching both theoretical contents and practice and practical contents in companies with company placements. We cover a wide range of subjects, dentistry, craftsmanship, but we have a problem. We don't have enough young people to continue and maintain all these trades and jobs in the region of Thuringia. Secondary school leavers are eligible for this type of vocational training in different fields. We offer career guidance to all students and counseling after year 7. You can see the pictures about this specific trade, or, like manual skills, welding or soldering, using a hammer. In our projects, students learn about professional practices. We aim to increase their competitiveness and improve their skills for them to make a professional decision at due time. Together with our partners, we seek to train future generations with an early vocational training to enable them to choose a number of jobs and actually try them for a period of time in company placements or work placements in 5 professional areas in just 1 week. They can try different jobs and get a taste of different professions, different jobs. After year 8, they can spend a week in a company, and after their placement, they are given a certificate. 30,000 certificates have been given already to students, and they are part of their CVs. In recent years, we have awarded 150,000 certificates, vocational training certificates. We work closely with counselors, with teachers, and with companies and enterprises. So we have covered the whole vocational training loop. Vocational training is part of the curricula of upper secondary schools. From the Chamber of Commerce, we try to liaise with other players. We want students to be keen and enthusiastic. We give them little projects. We assign them with projects so that they can actually put themselves to the test in a given profession or job. Just a small example. In engineering, students try and design a central heating unit, right from the design, from the drilling, the welding. Sometimes there are some minor accidents there, and mistakes can be made, of course. But most importantly, the students get the feeling that they have control of their future, professionally speaking, of which we are most glad. The funds have been very important in trying to cover a huge number of students. It's very important to train people in this respect, to train young people. Thank you. Let's move on. Let's go to Romania, to the region of Constance.
For me, it's an honor to be together with you in Valencia. I'm the mayor of Constanța in Romania, a port city, border of EU and NATO. In 5 minutes, I'm gonna tell you a story. A short story. More than 2,500 years ago, around 600 BC, before Christ, to be more exact, a small village was born from the sea and by the sea. The city, the village, enlarged itself big enough to convince a Roman emperor, Augustus, to banish Ovid, Publius Ovidius Naso, from Sulmona, Italy, to Tomis. He was unhappy in Constanța, in Tomis, but he was productive, and he left us together a great heritage, one of the greatest poets of Latinity. Tomis became, step by step, Constanța, and up to the Romanian Independence War, 1878, the population was, roughly speaking, 10,000 people. After that, from the Roman Empire, it was transferred definitively to Romania. The city grew up to 100 years ago, and we've reached 20,000 inhabitants. Our forefathers worked hard, and they've built the largest and the deepest port on the Black Sea, a channel linking the Black Sea with the Danube, connecting our region with Europe. At that time, Constanța became a home for Armenians, Greeks, Italians, you name it. And Constanța became a second home from each one who visited our city. Of course, we've designed and built a resort, Mamaia, separated at the beginning. But unfortunately, the revolution came from this point of view. After 1989, we had a population 350,000 inhabitants. So in 100 years, to increase one city from 20,000 people to 350,000, wow, it's quite impressive. But we've lost somehow our identity. After revolution, like in all the ethnic part of Europe, there were changes. The most important one, being part of EU. 10 years ago, Romania became member of EU, and this transformed our city and our country. What we've done in these 10 years, we've used structural funds, and of course, we've built a highway linking our capital with Constanța, a ring road. We've enlarged the beaches. We've stopped the coastal erosion. We've updated the infrastructure in Mamaia, which became part of our city, transforming our city in a touristical city. Also, we were trying to regain our identity. And behind me, you can see the old part of the city, which was planned to be demolished in socialism era. And we've stopped this process. And now, dear Katyusha, our Ovid has a square. We've applied for structural funds, and we've used this for infrastructure in the old part of the city. We wrote 4 projects: a promenade, the square, the streets, the beaches. We've used also the money to upgrade infrastructure in Mamaia. Mamaia was a separated part of the body of our city. Now, it's part of our city, and 4 years ago, won the award for the most dynamic resort in Europe, competing with Ibiza and other resorts. What we've achieved, we've stopped the decrease of population. The unemployment in Constanța, it's less than 0.6%. During the summer, we are organizing a whole range of events, cultural events, sportive events, international events. I've discussed with Mr. President of the Committee of the Region last week, and I've told him that in that particular day, a South Korean violinist, Sarah Chang, was playing Vivaldi in Ovidiu Square. Something incredible a few years ago, before Romania was part of EU. In the same time, we hosted the European Youth Chess Championship. More than 2,000 kids from 48 countries competing. Triathlon, you name it. Everybody now has this appeal. We are safe. Of course, it's important not just to apply on paper for the projects, but with the heart, because we wanted to regain our status. Constanța was European before Europe, in fact. This was our history. We live in peace, we live in tolerance, we don't have conflict. Of course, being the eastern border of EU and NATO gives us, let's say, an unclear perspective about the future. But we are confident because together we have a bright future. I'm pretty sure this meeting in Valencia will convince us that we have a singular chance to work together also in future. That's why, because next year our country is going to celebrate 100 years from the big unification, I'm addressing to the PAS group in the Committee of Region a kind invitation to have the group meeting in Constanța in Romania, preparing the presidency of the Europe in 2019. Constanța became home for each person who visited Constanța. The same feeling I had in Valencia, the same feeling I had in each city I visited where the projects implemented with structural funds were written with the heart, not only with the necessity of solving a problem. Romania, Constanța are proud to be part of Europe. And since I became mayor in a political campaign in which I used the hashtag together, we are proud to be part of EU. Of course, the future might seem unclear nowadays, but it's in our hand, it's in our power, in respect for our forefathers, to look with confidence in the future. I think nobody has a magical solution to read, like a riddle, what is going to be after Brexit. But I'm sure our brothers in UK will remain our brothers. So this is the story of my city. It's a safe city. We have everything need, not on the level of Valencia or the cities or regions you are representing, but we have a big heart and we have the will to convince you that we are together brothers. Thank you very much.
The time, please. El profesor Martin Charter nos lleva.
Professor Martin Charter is going to take us to the Arctic region.
Hopefully, it is up there. 640,000 tons of nets and ropes going to the sea each year. That represents around 10% of the ocean waste plastic. And we're hearing a lot more about that problem globally at the moment. I'm part of the Circular Ocean project that has been funded by the Northern Periphery and Arctic Programme with partners in Norway, in Scotland, in Denmark through Greenland and Ireland. I'm from the UK and we were brought in particularly for our knowledge around eco-innovation and eco-entrepreneurship. So what have we found so far in the project? Our partners have gone out to the different port areas and they've researched what the activities are going around the whole issues of the collection, the recycling and the conversion of the nets potentially into products. What we've seen at the port areas is very little nylon nets because there are markets for those nylon nets, but there are piles often contaminated of the polypropylene and the polyethylene nets. So there are already markets for those nylon nets. What we found in parallel global research into products that are being made from fishing net polymers is there's also nylon in those products. So what we found is really in the European context, only two significant recyclers of the net. A mechanical recycler that takes all the different polymers in Denmark, who is in the process of producing a series of pellets there, potentially going to products. And then an Italian company called Aquafil, who've got a very innovative de- and repolymerization process to effectively produce second life fibers as good as new. And then those fibers, through their Eco-Nile brand, are going out into carpet tiles, into clothing and other products. So there are a range of products out there, but there's often small companies doing this that are reusing the nets in different forms, maybe into bracelets, and there's a few other small innovative companies that are starting to emerge. Notably, unfortunately, one not in Europe, in Chile, called Burio, who are making skateboards from the polymers using injection molding. So part of the problem at the moment, if you've got this growing challenge around those waste nets, that's a European coastal problem, but there's not enough capacity to drive that innovation at the moment. We've got a very practical example, and if any of you know anybody who can deal with this, is a company who wants to raise awareness of ocean waste plastics in the company. They want to buy 100,000 bracelets made from either the fibers or the ropes, but they cannot find anybody who's got the critical mass to supply those products. That also illustrates a finding from about 3 or 4 Interreg and ERDF projects that we've been involved in, where we've had 600 eco-innovative companies through our programs. 2 major problems for those micro SMEs and the startups: lack of access to early stage funding to produce your first prototype, and lack of skills in terms of commercialization. So this is a big problem, particularly the local area. And what we need to design in Europe is much better systems locally, and particularly looking at this problem in ports, to bring the entrepreneurs together, to bring the funders together with the innovators and other organizations to create and design that system to bring good ideas to the marketplace. That doesn't exist, or very rarely exists. So what we're finishing in the project, is looking at that whole idea and looking at the idea of a lab or a hub to collect those nets and then to create products from those nets. Other interesting examples are starting to emerge of particularly one company, crowdfunding. They've raised 200,000 euros to 3D print using the filaments from the nets. So we've got even so-called Industry 4.0 moving into this area. So in closing, this is really just a very interesting example of the challenges of circular economy innovation. And, perhaps there are opportunities out there. I haven't had a chance to talk to you about other interesting things, such as repair cafes, which I'm very interested in. So if you've got any in your towns or cities, any repair cafes, please do talk to me about it, because I run one and I did the first global research. And also in any of your areas, if you have robots that are looking at disassembly of products, I'm very interested to talk to you for another reason on there. So hopefully that's within my 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. En Francia, en la región de Nouveau-Aquitaine, Isabelle Boudinot.
Oui, bonjour.
Good afternoon to all of you. Just a very brief word to thank all the teams of the town and the region for this wonderful welcome that we received since last night. It's been wonderful. And also to thank the team at the Committee of the Regions, for we've seen some very interesting postcards, but they come as a great complement to the speeches this morning, which was of remarkable quality to uphold and maintain this cohesion policy in spite of the strong tension that we have on the European budget. So my postcard is going to be focusing on one of these backgrounds, the FDR. As you know, France has seen 2 great reforms concerning its regions. The first is that of having finally authorized the regions to be managed by the European Fund, and that was in 2014. And in 2015, there was the fusion of the regions. Our region, La Nouvelle-Aquitaine, is practically the biggest one in France. And this has been now the fusion of 3 regions, former Aquitaine, Poitou-Charentes. This region has 6 million inhabitants that everybody knows the capital, which is Bordeaux, with a coastline on the Atlantic with great tourism, and also another region, the Limousin. Aquitaine had a sector focused on agriculture, the Dordogne, and the Nouvelle-Aquitaine is the most agricultural area in terms of production in France. It has 12 departments, very rural, with not a strong population, as you've probably heard of La Creuse and Corrèze. This is a farm, as you can see in the pictures. It was formerly in the community of Bonneval. 3 young people decided to start working with ecological agriculture, and since 2016 they have been working with cattle breeding animals, and they are developing a new grant for the young farmers of 60,000 grants, to which must be added some funds to create the aromatic plant workshop. That cost 100,000 euros, which was financed 55%, which is a mixture of credits of the region and also fiduciary ones. So as you can see, all of this project has come up in a territory which was a little bit precarious, difficult, and Europe and the region have found a way to create wealth, to support local initiatives, to continue having local growth, all the while respecting the environment. And this shows that there's always a hope for these kind of territories. In these rural territories, structural funds are helping to bring wealth to all the area and to all the citizens. So that's the message that we have been sharing since this morning. Continue to support these structural funds, and let's have a budget which is up to meet this. We need to be less dependent on the contributions of member states, but I'm sure that Isabel Thomas will talk more about this, who's going to be talking. Thank you.
Sit in the center of the world. That's the way you are looking upon yourself and the citizen, of course. Malmö is a city quite not big in a European point of view, 330,000 inhabitants. 4 of 10 are born in another country. I'm born in Estonia. I came to Sweden during the Second World War as a war refugee together with my parents. In the city of Malmö, we have 178 different nationalities living there. We are in that way a cosmopolitan city, And that is also very important, not to be too nationalistic and not looking too much inside the borders. We must be proud of our history, of course, like we heard from Constanza. We understand our lives backwards, but we have to live them forwards. So carry the history with you. This is the place where the working class heroes were working in Malmö. The Kockums shipyard, like you had a shipyard in Dunkirk and other places. This was the world's biggest shipyard after the Second World War, and a very efficient one. They built these 350,000-ton carriers in 29 days each, produced them all the way like that. And then I will tell some words about to see beyond the borders. This is in the beginning of the 90s, 1992. We had the the Rio Conference, 1992, about what's happening on the world. That was an important conference, and most important thanks to this girl, Severin Suzuki, 12-year-old girl from Vancouver, who told all the members of the states, the heads of the states, what are you doing with the world? What's happening? What are you going to bring over to my kids? Are they going to experience clean water, clean air, coral reefs, rainforests? That conference, that paved the road to the Kyoto and Kyoto Protocol, that paved the road to Nagoya and the biodiversity treaty that we had there. That was a very inspiring thing for us, because when I was elected, the Social Democrats got their own majority in Malmö, 1994. Then most of our industries has disappeared in a period of 5 years. We went from full employment 1990 till 22% unemployment 1995. And in that period, of course, what to do? Where is the future? We entered the European Union the 1st of January 1995, and we used this period to see where were all the visions for the young people. They were very much embedded in the Rio Protocol. They were very much embedded in what's happening in the world. The elderly people were very anxious about what's happening when we lost 28,000 jobs in the industry. And we created vision groups where we put together citizens, people from the academia, people from the trade unions, people from the business sectors, to start to say, where do we want our city to be within 10 years? We took, of course, we took up what was talking about in Europe, being an communication hub, of course, and what you said in Rio, to be a forerunner in environmental issues, of course, being a forerunner in social inclusiveness. And this vision project, this was not making a plan. This was a way of forming the future together with the citizen. In that way, open the eyes and see it's not only things what's happening here. For instance, we were supposed to build this bridge over to Denmark. That was looked upon from the young people, from the women, from the environmentalists as a dinosaur project. Are you going to give even more emissions? Are you going to destroy the nature even more with traffic going down to the rural area or something like that? And we said, how can we change this? Make this bridge something that builds a union, a transnational pact between Sweden and Denmark, fighting unemployment. Can we use this more for train traffic, electric train traffic, to reduce the emission instead? And in that way, that bridge from Control and Metal, that became a bridge for opening all, or building all the other mental bridges to see where the future lies. And for instance, we are talking a lot about things, what's happening in our city. We are going to build a fixed link between Denmark and Germany also. That is not only an issue between Denmark and Germany. I was visiting the Brenner Pass also. They were talking about what's happening in the surrounding. These are links that are parts of the Scandinavian corridor. We must understand ourselves that this is a part how we are connecting ourselves from Helsinki, Stockholm, Oslo, down to Copenhagen, Malmö, Hamburg, down through Austria, Italy, down to Palermo, and then the motorways that we see over to Valencia and places like that, to see that when we are investing, we are not investing only in our own society. We are investing in building a Europe that is beneficial for most of the people in Europe. Otherwise, you are pointing fingers on each other. Oh, why do they get so much money and we don't get this money? Then you understand that they are building something that is part in something bigger, where we are part of that also. And time is running, but also I like to say that what we did, for instance, in our harbor area, where we had this shipyard, there we said that can we together with the best scientists in environmental questions, can we change a filthy, polluted brownfield area, 1 million square meters, where we want to build a completely sustainable part of the city that is CO2 neutral. And we did that, and we get all the recognitions. We will get the first prize of the city of tomorrow, like that. And that made all the citizens in the city to feel that we are part of taking care of the issues of CO2 emissions and greenhouse gases emissions. This, of course, was about how we are warming our houses, how we are cooling them in the summer. And this is no electricity produced in other ways than 100% produced by locally produced renewable energy. That was possible to do and be proud of. And the next issue, of course, is to build a new university, a brand new university, where you can see that the young people that needs better education can go into a university where you are combining technique and society environment, where you're combining the same way art, communication, and building the gaming stories like we are doing there, or health and society, cross old faculty borders. And that, of course, creates also possibilities to see that we are part of that. Of course, we are using also some European funds, but not very much. But we are using the urban funds. We are using some of the funds for the infrastructure, like I showed you. But most of all, after 10 years, 2009, we got the prize that we were the forerunner in Sweden. We were the best economic growth city in Sweden. And 4 months later, we got the UN most prestigious Scroll of Honor, being the 21st century's eco-city. We are showing that economic growth and sustainability is not contradictory. They are working together. We lost 28,000 jobs. We have since then created 52,000 new jobs. And that means that new jobs in a sector that is much more sustainable in that way. And if I had more time, then I should tell you about, of course, how it changed where we took, before we put all the waste, we put that on landfill. 1995, we put 70% on landfill. Today, we are reusing, we are regaining resources out of it, and we are regaining energy out of it. We are putting 1.4% on landfill. All the rest is used and reused. All the organic waste goes to fermentation, gives us biogas. All the city buses are run by the biogas. And that is the way that people understand in what way they are part of creating the new world. This was a part of Rio conference that was about agenda for the 21st century. Today, we are all active in the Paris Agreement. We are active in sustainable development goals that are all these challenges that all of us is working with. But what I'm trying to say to you is you can never do that top down. You must always engage the citizen, must engage the local people in it, and that open your eye process. That creates a lot of possibilities for the future. And I'm sure what I'm seeing here in Valencia, what I'm seeing in many places in Europe today, where I can see the change that we had the last 10, 15, 20 years, that is, for me, a very optimistic way. And if we can get that into force and that in action and tell the stories for most of us, then I'm very optimistic for the future. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much for all of you. ¿Alguna pregunta? ¿Tenéis alguna pregunta para los ponentes?
Any questions to the speakers? We encourage you to participate on the social media and to share with us your comments, such as those by Alexander Kobowski. He says,
among our governments and among our cities. Estamos sufriendo grandes cambios.
Well, that's the translation of the person's comment on Twitter. The problems we are suffering at borders in the East, we need more solidarity from our governments and between citizens. We encourage you to continue participating on social media. Now, those of you who are not yet registered with the website, on the website Europe Together, please do so, because you will have a chance to participate in discussions and debates on a monthly basis. Many have already participated, particularly from July the 1st to 31st August. A lot of young people reflected about the future of Europe. The rest of us, whether we participate or not, can have access to all comments and try and improve them and even vote on them. You will see a like icon, such as that on Facebook. You can use it for those initiatives which you like best. The people who get more likes are invited to the corresponding Together event. That's how we got to invite what we call the Together ambassadors. And we have them here, 2 young people whose proposals about European cohesion were found to be more interesting.
By thanking the S&D group for the great cooperation that we've been having with the Young European Socialists since we took over since April. It has been a great cooperation, and we are very proud to be here in the Together event. I would like to
necessary for Greece's progress, and by extension, Europe's advancement. And of course, in this, up until now, flawless arrangement, there is always room for improvement. When talking about the effects and purposes of the cohesion policy, we are referring to the relationship between the people of the EU. Therefore, the fact that we should focus on, in order to successfully spend in the future the Union's money, is the people. Providing the European citizens with proper, extended education, not only will prepare them for the future and the technological advances that it includes, but also they turn out to be more open-minded and affable towards everything different. An educated mind is a mind free of prejudices and pride, a mind ready to survive and thrive within the brand new era Europe is working towards. On the same ground, after receiving the proper education, it would be wise to urge them to get involved with new business plans where environment has a part. More specifically, the environment has a lot to offer to Europe, from basic protected market to low carbon economy. Thankfully, Europe, the old world, has been blessed with a truly rich soil. At the same time, the Union would be achieving one more of its goals, the protection of the planet's environment. In conclusion, the cohesion and regional policy is what binds Europe together and what makes it a successful, necessary and powerful union of the world. Thank you for your kind attention.
Good evening. I think we all agree on one thing here. We've heard a lot of good stories on why cohesion policy really is needed and still will be needed in the next years. And I'm not a local politician, so I don't have a good story to tell you. So that's why I'm here to ask some questions more than to tell you a story. And maybe I hope that the next panel will be able to give some answers to the questions that I have and that I believe many of us probably do have as well. So first, again, cohesion policy is needed. We all agree that it can enhance local development, and it's really needed for the objectives that we as Social Democrats want for Europe. If I think of the social pillar and of all the social rights that we want to make more cohesive and more coherent around Europe, this is only possible if also the development of the different regions in Europe is more equal. So that's why I believe we should look at cohesion policy in a more holistic way, to combine the different policies we're looking at and to see the social pillar and the cohesion policy as a combination of policies for our social objectives for Europe. Because really, if our governments and the European Union keep in a way destroying our public provisions of health services and education, really cohesion policy helps a lot to fill the gaps that we're creating otherwise, but we need to have a cohesive policy through which each little part of European policy actually manages to create more inclusion and more social welfare for everyone. The second point, the second question I wanted to raise is about how citizens feel about cohesion policy. Actually, at university, this was not too long ago, my thesis was about how the citizens of Europe perceived cohesion policy. And the result was that the citizens of regions that received a lot of European funds did not trust the European Union more than citizens in the regions in the same countries that did not receive as many European funds. And therefore, I'm actually really glad about the speech of the former mayor of Malmö about the inclusion and the engagement with people, because what I believe is really that cohesion policy is one of these policies that has to follow a bottom-up approach as much as possible. If from Brussels and from local governments we have a top-down approach on cohesion policy and fail to really grasp the needs of people, cohesion policy is not going to work, and especially people are not going to be more enthusiastic about the European Union. What I would actually also ask the next panel is to think with us about ways to engage people more in cohesion policy, maybe also to find democratic ways, inclusive ways, so that people themselves can have a say on what projects they would like to be funded on and how to engage more with policymaking in general and with European cohesion policy specifically. Thank you.
El próximo evento de Europe Together tendrá lugar en Bruselas y versará.
The next event will be about progressive parties in Europe. You're still on time to participate and start betting what will happen with the Socialist Party in the coming elections. We're going to have a short break now. Thank you.
¿5 minutes? ¿No? Son solo 2 minutos, o sea, no hace falta que si queréis que salgáis, es solo para montar el escenario. Por favor, os animo, os recuerdo si queréis el hashtag que estamos...
Please, you can see the hashtag on the screen, Europe Together.
¿Al micro? Si queréis, vais sube. Si me hablas el primero. Por favor, son 5 minutos.
5-minute break.
Para hablar. Sí, me han dicho. Espérate. Eso me han dicho.
Can you talk? Can you talk? Tell them a question. Ask a question.
I have Retomamos.
Let's continue our Europe Together event. Please be seated. Please take a seat. We are going to continue with our discussion, and I hope you will participate. So far, interaction hasn't been particularly intense.
Please. Sorry, we have to continue with the program. Please. Please sit down.
You have to tell them to sit down.
Please, please, we have to continue with the program. Please sit down in your chairs because we have to continue. Commissary, please. Yes, speakers. Please sit down. Inmaculada, please. Avanzamos en las jornadas hasta ahora.
Let's move on. Let's continue. I encourage you to participate. Let's start talking about Europe now.
Have to continue. Thank you very much. Avanzamos en las jornadas. Hasta ahora no ha habido mucha interacción.
As I was saying, interaction was not particularly intense so far. So let's now focus on European policy after 2020. when the current program 2014-2020 will come to an end. We have invited some major representatives in this field, such as Corina Cretu. Welcome.
Fabricio Barca, economista y autor del libro Una agenda para una...
Fabricio Barca, thank you. The author of An Agenda for a Reformed Cohesion Policy. Karl-Heinz Lambert, the President of the European Committee of the Regions, welcome. And Isabel Thomas, Member of Parliament and Vice President, responsible for budgetary policy and cohesion policy. Thank you, dear friends. First of all, I would like to thank you for your presence.
Here, and as I said, I think it's very important that we have a lot of people who are very much involved, and also young people who would like to know more about cohesion policy. So thank you, Mr. Professor Barca, Isabel, we were colleagues, we are colleagues in the European Parliament, Karl-Heinz, we were colleagues, and now we work together hand in hand, European Commission, Parliament, and Committee of the Region for fighting for this policy, which really changed the life of the people. And I will start with a question put by one of the young ambassadors of cohesion policy about citizens. In my view, this is the most important and most visible policy in the life of the people, but we have a real problem of the communication of this policy. You know very well that we as European parliamentarians, we were in Strasbourg. Today I just came from Madrid, thanks to the high-speed train done by European money. And we are here in a building renovated by European money. My question is, how many people from Valencia know about these projects that are done with European money? And according with our studies, 1/3 of the population know about cohesion policy. The good news is 80% of these few people that know about cohesion policy has a very good impression about it and knows that changed the life of the people. But it's really our big problem that we had this game that everything that is bad is coming from Brussels and everything that is good is coming from the Lord Mayors and the regions. And we have to highlight more. And we already put in on the agenda on the Maltese presidency this issue of communication. Then we really ask the ministers and the presidents of the regions and the representatives to show what we are doing with European money. My friend Katusha Marini from Norcia knows very well how much we work hand in hand for helping these regions in Italy hit by natural disasters. We were fighting in the European Parliament as a group in SD to change the regulation to allow member states to use 100% European funds when is needed in the case of natural disasters. We have succeeded after the trialogue to achieve 95%. And yesterday, for instance, European Parliament approved 1.2 billion for helping Italy. And now it's the next stage is to be approved by the Council. So we do a lot of things. Yourself also, I saw that you had visited today some projects done by European funds here in Valencia. I think it's not another time when this work together means so much. So we really have to be together, and I liked when the young ambassador said about in all languages, ensembles, zusammen, insieme, junto, it's in Spanish it's junto. Junto, mazi is in Greek, and if I may, I will teach you in the language of the country I'm coming from, împreună. This means together. So we have to be all together, because you know very well that this week President Juncker announced that the next multi-annual financial framework will be submitted from the Commission to the European Parliament in May. So this will be the toughest month for us. And we know very well that the negotiations with Brexit, with UK is not going well. According with our statistics, we will lose 15 billion per year due to the leaving of the UK. So we have by default less budget, and we have new challenges like migration, security, internal, external. So it's very early to say how the budget will look like. There are many ideas. Now we are in the stage that we have no taboos. We are very well aware that we have to make this policy more flexible and more simplification is a key. But this is, we also ask the European Parliament to adopt this omnibus regulation, which will introduce some simplification even from this programming period. But it is very important for the member states to obtain themselves to put additional conditions and to make the life of beneficiary much more easier, because I am very angry when I see young people that they give up to use our funds because the bureaucracy and the procedures are too lengthy, and I think it's very important to show what we are doing. And of course, I am waiting for your questions. I am responsible for 300 regions. Now is the second time in my mandate here in Valencia. I visited a lot Italy, a lot Greece and other countries that suffered a lot. And I was very happy to inaugurate, for instance, the last part of the highways from Thessaloniki to Athena under the Olympus. So we really have to say what we are doing. So now Thessaloniki, Athena, 600 kilometers we can do in 3.5 hours due to European money, and so on and so on. I was in Netherlands, in the village. Mr. President said village, but in my view, it's a very nice place because you know very well that it's one thing to have a village in Germany, France, and another thing in Eastern Europe. But I was in Eupen. It's the town where, the region where Mr. President Lamberts was president 15 years, senator. He was a main figure for so many years. And I saw so many nice projects. So, I would like to fight together that this policy to remain a policy for all regions, because we were in the rich region where they use the funds in the cross-border cooperation programs, for instance, I am very fond and keen to this cross-border cooperation because so many things comes from Europe, as Erasmus, cross-border cooperation, small and medium-sized enterprises, and we take for granted. And it's very important to understand that European Union should be stronger, even in the framework of 27 after 2019. So it's up to us to be ambitious and to do more with less. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now we need brevity, please, because I promise a discussion between our attendees. Thank you. Fabrizio, whenever you want.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I will tackle exactly the same point that the Commissioner has on the question. We have a paradox. We had these amazing flowers, 1,000 flowers. We had 7 flowers, but there are another 993 amazing flowers around Europe. And then it doesn't go through. No? It doesn't go through. We don't convince the people. We don't move them. We don't give the feeling that this is Europe. So what is the issue? I think that we progressive people we should know about paradoxes, because we have a big paradox on our heads. I mean, Europe as the most amazing and serious inequalities developed through 30 years of wrong policies. We have pushed people into divides, new social divides, new economic divides, fears for your identity, fear for your norms at local level, fears in rural areas, not just about economic and social, also about values, okay? And then these fears have not produced a support for the people who have opposed the wrong policies and the progressive. These fears have gone in the wrong direction. They are supporting barriers, they're supporting closing, they're supporting anti-competition, they're supporting... So we have that's another paradox, okay? So we should know about paradoxes and we must tackle paradoxes, otherwise we are not going to win the hearts. And I think the answer is one, and we should adopt the first line on President Juncker's speech, which is, we have been too cautious. This is not time for caution. We have been too prudent, troppo prudenti. This is the issue. I mean, in the case of cohesion policy, it's even more amazing, the paradox, because in my view, after 18 years, 20 years, having worked with it at every possible level, administrative level, local level, top level, political level, ministerial level, my answer is that the present and the current arrangement after the 2013 reform of cohesion policy is the right regulation. It is not a problem of rules. The reason why we have a paradox is that it's about implementation, is the political implementation, is the technical implementation, is the human resource implementation of that policy where we lose. And we should tackle it. I mean, I've written proposals on the basis of that, but I leave that if somebody wants to know about them. That's not, I argue in my remaining minute why I believe that. The current policy has all the ingredients that you asked for. The participatory aspect is there. It is a policy that brings context back into the place, okay? All the wrong policies the last 30 years have been space-blind policies, okay? Policies designed in a competence centers, believing that you can design a policy and ignore the amazing amount of knowledge. It's not just a matter of democracy, it's a matter of the knowledge in order to design a proper health system is only among the people. It's not just that we are the nice people that want to hear them. Participation is knowledge, and the policy is there. Not only that, we are not blind. We know that the local level sometimes degenerates. Let's speak frankly, this is a political meeting. Sometimes the responsibility for the underdevelopment traps is due to the local leadership. So this is not just a policy that says it's not good old local development, oh how lovely they are in every place. This is a policy that enhances and gives power to the local level, but retains for the European Union a power, what Adam Smith called the impartial spectator, invasive, paternalistic, Amartya Sen would say. So this is an amazing policy that combines a local level, potentially, local level empowerment and a strong power at supranational level, distant from places, not to be captured. You know, Corina cannot be captured by the small little detail of my Calabria, okay? So the design is appropriate. So what is the problem? That when it comes to it, we do not really believe in it. We have linked in the 2013 reform this policy to the general budgetary policy. It is an appropriate link, but then when it comes to it, the linkage goes only one way. And you have displacement, so you have, rather than additionality, you have substitution. So you are spending with the cohesion policy, sometimes the national domestic policy is coming. Not only national governments claim that it is their own merit, but they're actually cutting the national funds. So there is no coherence between the macroeconomics and the design of this policy, okay? So, but this doesn't require any change of the rule. It requires the politics. It requires anger, discussion, openness, boldness, no caution. And it requires, as I claim in my very specific proposal, to which I can come, I finished, it requires also strengthening and adjusting the role of the European Commission, and creating, this is what I suggest, and empowering the audit and control role to a system like the central bank system, a central system of audit and control. So you have national authorities for audit that are European branches of a European national agency, exactly where the central banks, so that the European Commission can take care of substance, of contents, of results, and be enhanced. I mean, and also have more people. Oh, more people, God, we cannot employ more people. I know that's the first reaction in Brussels. I said 500 new pioneers, recruited, high-level recruitment. Not nepotism, recruited by a system. There are some amazing guys, some amazing young guys, 32, 33, 28, 37, all over Europe, 500 people working for the European Commission for a unified fund that can actually not stay in Brussels, but spend 7 years on the ground, on the streets, exactly as you said. It can be done, but then it costs about $1.5 billion, $2 billion. It's the cost of a couple of big motorways that probably will not even be used, and I'm saying that with some reference to where I stay now. Thank you.
Thank you. President.
On a parlé de paradoxe, mais le plus grand paradoxe, c'est certainement que l'Union.
We have spoken about paradoxes. The greatest paradox is that the European Union always wants more with less money. And one day this has to stop. This morning we already spoke about the famous 1 cup of coffee per European citizen that the budget costs each day. That's already a lot if we look at the sum, but actually in truth it's very little. However, I am also certain that we are not going to have huge additional sums. The most essential thing is that the cohesion policy is a policy which happens on the field, which is not conceived somewhere in Strasbourg or somewhere, but which is developed based on the regions and territorial collectives. That's what the aim is, and it's a good one. And I think, moreover, that there are a few simplifications to be made. Legislation is pages and pages long, and I have spent 30 years of my life to apply cohesion policy in the region. Sometimes it could be simpler. We might get there one day, but the most essential thing is that in the coming years, in spite of Brexit and other priorities, what's important is that we continue having a strong cohesion policy where all involved parties have a voice and which does not see itself destroyed by all sorts of conditions. A cohesion policy which is truly a policy that proves that the European Union has a true added value for people in the region where they live, because everywhere there are extraordinary things to be done. For a European Union without a cohesion policy would not be a European Union as myself and my colleagues see it in the Committee of the Regions. Good evening to all together. It's lovely to find ourselves all together here to share ideas, conditions, convictions, and analysis. The reason that I have come is that not only to share opinions and analysis, but also a great mobilization, for we are going to need a great mobilization of all of those who think that the European Union should very quickly have available some funds which will be able to fulfill this deficit and all of our aims. And I say this budget is impossible, as I'm saying, which represents barely 1% of the GDP. This budget no longer corresponds to the political commitments of the Council. In this last biannual framework, financial framework, we've seen a need of investment following the crisis of 2008, which took a long time, a need to regulate welcoming immigrants and participating in assisting countries coming into the Union, fighting against youth unemployment, etc., etc., and now the matter of defense. So at this level, it's already written in the text of the Commission, if we stick to this budget, then it's going to be the cohesion policies which are going to be the first victims. And this is dramatic, because beyond investment, the cohesion policy is the core of the European Union. It is all the regions, especially the poorest regions, to be able to come up to the same level of all the other European regions. This is what is going to bring us together and our convergence. And if we don't have the means to do so, what will become of us? I don't agree with the phrase that we were too cautious. No, I think we have been imprudent. It's getting too late, if not. We need this convergence. We have very little time, and the debate on the future budget is the perfect occasion. So we need to mobilize so that we can reconnect with the essence, with this policy and convergence of all the regions, of all the territories, so that we can achieve a same level of life, the same development, the same equality. And this is the core and the heart of the European project. Thank you.
Abrimos el debate. Espero que intervengan.
We are opening the debate. We hope to hear your interventions now. Fabrizio was talking about regional policies not being able to be decided solely in the European institutions and supra levels that are needed. You are all participants. You are receptors of the cohesion policies, so I encourage you to make your contributions. So are there any questions? Please, microphones. Thank you for having defended the territorial cohesion policy. As commented by Isabel Thomas, these are the core of the European Union. The cohesion policy is part of the DNA of the European Union. So how can we go beyond this? This morning I suggested that we added a croissant to the coffee with more or less €3 per inhabitant per day for the European Union, which would make up a budget which would finally represent 500 million, 1/10 of the US budget. So how can we, perhaps reflecting on the Eurozone and creating the budgetary capacity of the Eurozone, how can we reinforce the funds that will allow to increase investment in the European Union? I would like to go straight into answering this, for indeed, why do we get stuck with this ridiculous 1% or this coffee that we were talking about, which is not meeting the needs? For years, the structure of the Union is based on 80% of the contribution from member states, and only on 20% of its own resources. For this structure of the budget, for each negotiation of the budget, the sole aim of governments is to pay the least possible. And whilst we remain stuck to this budgetary structure, the only aim of governments is going to be to pay as least as possible. So what the discourse of the founders of the European Union was to say we should never allow budget participation of member states be superior to our own resources. And unfortunately, we let things go, and now we're in this situation. So we have to come back our own resources. Last February, we saw some lack of transparency. There are 10 propositions that are actually very interesting. And there is a considerable advancement with fiscal tax and justice, who are hardly paying any taxes in the European Union. There's the famous tax on financial transactions, and a whole series of proposals that have been made by Mr. Monti and the committee that he gathered together, and that would merit, which is the aim of the European Parliament, to make negotiations based on this, to have a parallel discussion on our own resources, and we would not validate the framework presented by the Council.
This expression about cup of coffee comes, you know very well, that if you give to the state 100 euro, 50 euros is going for taxes and assurance, and less than 1 euro is transferred to the European budget. And from so little money, we are expected to do roads, highways, hospitals, small and medium-sized enterprises, to help young people, and so on. So I think it's very important what Isabel said, that we are talking about own resources. We have this Monti report, which proposes a lot of new taxes, but they are rejected by member states when it comes to taxes. So we are here in a very big situation. Member states do not want to fill the gap that we have after Brexit. They don't accept taxes. So it's clearly that we gathered here in Valencia with the Socialists in order to give this strong message that, as you said, cohesion policy is the best represents our values, that we need growth, prosperity, we need growth, but we need it for everybody, not just for a few. This is very important. And of course, you said about the battle that we have, but it's also a battle inside the Commission, and I can assure you that from my side, I really think that not only that we should not accept the reduction of this policy, but we must call for consolidating the policy as a pillar of European construction, because it's, as I said in my introductory remarks, most visible policy in the life of the people. And without cohesion policy, I think the last glue, the last cement that keep us together will go. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nothing comes by itself, and certainly not money, especially when it's money that belongs to others. We have to fight, and I think the struggle for our own resources is vital, but I fear slightly that we will not end up doing this already in the middle of next year. We also need to struggle and fight on another terrain in the framework of resources that we can already foresee now. And here we need a veritable alliance for cohesion, and we will have the pleasure of the inauguration next week to launch this alliance. We are going to try and mobilize everybody and all people in the regions, in the towns, in cities. There are hundreds of thousands of people that make projects reality, and we can travel every day for the rest of our lives and not get to see the amount of projects that are being developed. But unfortunately, they don't always end up being positive for the alliance of the European Union. We need to keep mobilizing. I'm not entirely in agreement with my friend Rouillon when he says he would like to add a croissant to the coffee cup. So I would instead add a packet of crisps or a plate of chips. So in the debates that we're having now, we need to go a little bit beyond. We need to see more than just the cohesion policy. We need to be very attentive to what is being done with the famous Juncker's Fund, the investment fund, which is important, which mobilizes private money. But we need to avoid that any European genie manages to get money moving into that fund. We need to be wary of this. We need to put an end to this policy of austerity, which is entirely technical and blind, and which leads many people to being incapable of investing correctly because we are applying in too much of a blind way when it comes to convergence and debt. We need flexibility. We mustn't do anything that comes to mind. But if we combine what is left of the money following Brexit with an intelligent flexibility, the real solution is obviously the new task, to search for new means. Any other questions? Yes, a question which I hold very dear to my heart. Cohesion of Europe, as I see it, is down to two issues. When we have the European passport and European identity card, which would enormously reduce the problems of our citizens who are moving to other countries within Europe. So when the citizens Europe, when does that start counting?
So I think this is very...
Well, I think that's
exactly the life of the citizens. It is the paradox of this policy is that it was done at the pressure of the UK. When the mines in the Wales were closed in 75, UK and Italy said that they will not go to the council in Rome if will not be a fund, a solidarity fund to help these regions affected by the industrial changes. So how many people today from the Wales, when they voted for leaving the UK, knew that they have jobs because of the ERDF, because of this? And the first European Commissioner for Regional Policy was Lord Thomson, which is considered the founding father of this policy. And this policy in the treaty, it is precisely the policy which is designed to close a gap not only between the East and the West, but also inside countries, inside regions, and to make a better life for the citizens. And I would like to assure you that we don't take any decision without consultations with the stakeholders, but also I would like to see from the citizens themselves more interest about Europe, about you saw very well also in the UK that they knew about European Union. They Googled only after they voted to go, to know what the European Union means. So I think it's a two-way effort that we have to do. We to explain better, not to use our jargons, to be much more closer to the citizens and communicate more, and also the citizens to have the voice louder. But I would like to say that I think now in the last years, the social dimension is much more present in the European policy. I really think that, and after 10 years when we spoke only about austerity, 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 cut. Now we enter in the 5th year of economic growth. The unemployment is the lowest in Europe in the last 10 years. So in a way we have growth, but it's slow and it's not enough because people and citizens, they are not patient anymore. And the populistic waves, it's very high. When I first came in the European Parliament as an observer, 1 year before my country joined the European Union, there were only 2 people isolated, Le Pen, father and daughter. And now there are more than 150 people against European Union inside the European Parliament, benefiting for all the privilege of being members of European Parliament. So I think it's very dangerous what is happening with these populistic waves in every country, which comes from insecurity, frustration, and all the things that maybe we are not able to explain. But the solution is to remain stronger together and to find solutions together, not to put walls and isolating ourselves in our ghettos. This is the most dangerous way of going on. Thank you so much.
Short answers, please.
This is one of the problems, and we hopefully are about, if it will be approved, to give even more, to make even more promises to the European citizen by approving the European Pillar of Social Rights. It's a beautiful document, but it's a very high document. It's a normative document. It's promising with no money. Okay? There are no resources attached. So that's risky. We keep promising people, all people. Now we deliver the promise to the bourgeoisie, okay? To the reflexive people, to the intellectuals, people who are studying, There is 20, 25, 30% of European citizens who are happy about it. Happy about globalization, they're happy about urban renewal, they're happy about changes. But there is an enormous and growing amount of people in the peripheries, in the rural areas. Look at the votes. Where are we losing? Where are they winning? It has a very strong territorial dimension. People in large areas of Europe, especially in small towns, peripheries is all large metropolitan towns, and the rural areas are not happy. They feel we promised they will be citizens, they are not. So now we're about to tell them that they have amazing rights, and tell the member states that each member state should comply with those rights, having to do with the minimum wage and many other things that I strongly believe and we strongly believe in. But that's dangerous. So again, let me come back to cohesion policy. I want to clarify why I say cautious. We have been too cautious in using the word inequality, social inclusion. We follow too much the language of the neoliberal for a long period of time, okay? I remember 7 years ago when I was advisor in the European Commission, it was very hard to say and to claim that this policy was aimed at increasing productivity and reducing inequalities. Now there is more. Now inequality. Yes, we should talk about inequality, but we should really address the issue exactly as Corina said. But I think the linkage between the social pillar and European cohesion is one of the issues, exactly as much as it is the linkage between the another promise that we're about to make, the 2030 agenda, taking the Sustainable Development Goals into Europe. These are goals that we are deciding in our big rooms as technocrats. What about the people? The only way, the only policy that we have to turn those amazing, beautiful goals into actual things that people feel is cohesion policy. And it can be done because we have decided, Corina runs 2,500 outcome indicators that have not been decided at the top. They've been chosen at the bottom. But we should bravely use them and discuss them in parliaments, and not discuss in parliaments only about fraud and irregularities, which is the only thing for which countries are asked to come to the European Parliament.
Je voudrais vraiment appuyer la remarque.
I'd like to support the remarks by Mr. Barca when he says, let's be cautious with our promises because nothing can be worse than not living up to your promises. I am curious as to what will happen in the Gothenburg summit and about the social pillar. But we need to make progress in this field, otherwise cohesion will be badly hit. Progress needs to be made, of course, but we need to have specific results. And if we're not able to do big things, let's start with smaller ones. If we do not have common criteria, our market will be more and more liberalized. The pressure on social services will do nothing but grow. And that's why I believe we need a turning point. I'm a bit put off, I'm a bit disappointed with the Juncker statement, with his speech. He speaks about his own convictions. He mentions freedom. That's all very well. Equality. That's all very well. He talks about the rule of law. That's all very well. Particularly at this moment in time in Europe and outside Europe. But I don't hear him say a word that to me, that to socialists, is extremely important. Solidarity, sympathy. I would have very much liked him to use that word, to use that term, but let's give him another chance. He will have a speech in short, and he might talk about solidarity. There are quite a few questions.
Thank you. My name is Peter Oswald. I am first vice chair of the Qatar Commission. First of all, let's just think. For us, it's a political debate. Who is Europe? Is it the European Commission? Is it the European Parliament? Who is the Europe? This is our citizens. And we have to think about. And what they like to see. We can always show what we did for the citizens in the past. But this is the past. The people like to see what we are able to do them for the future. Future is what is going on. And just look what the debate, general debate in the Europe. What we have on the table? White book from Juncker about 5 scenarios. But this is just technocratical scenarios. We need a vision. We need some vision of the Europe. We have to show the people where we go and how we use it. And what's happened with the cohesion policy. If I remember when I started working in European matters since 1999, I think, and I remember it was almost regional policy. We are discussing about Europe of the regions. We are discussing that matters. And just now, what is taken on the European level? Sometimes I listen, I feel that this is just a discussion about just how is the distribution of the European money between the countries. It's taken like that. Nobody speak about the success. Nobody speak, our commission of course speak, but it's generally just discussion of how much this country gets from the funds, how much gets that, and from other, how much money is going for this sector, and from both sides is waiting the private investment funds, and that is. But we have to show what is the crucial of cohesion policy. Crucial of cohesion policy is a regional policy, is very open on the. Mr. Barka spoke about all of the things. I not agree with everything is functioned so easy from the regulation like we talk about. But what should be for a crucial is your place-based approach. Place-based approach and to have flexibility on the regions just to make how to make the European goals, how to fulfill them through our interventions, but with the open area, how to survive with that. So for example, we need European goals, for example, reduce unemployment, but by the kind of the areas, it's absolutely different areas. Somebody can use it just by tourism.
Favor.
Somebody like that. Okay, I stop it.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Antes de responder, tenemos muchas preguntas, juntamos varias.
Right, thank you. There's another question here. Can we have the microphone? My name is Crystal Bayen. I come from the Union Association in Germany. I've been listening to all the comments, and yes, we can do specific things for workers in Eastern Germany. We introduced and implemented good measures to reinforce employment. And we put in place different measures in the weaker regions in Germany, particularly in the new Landers. And these measures are very, very specific. So we don't help companies that have dumping practices in place, poor conditions, poor working conditions. Rather, good criteria have been developed together with worker unions and associations, and these criteria have been implemented in 6 Landers. My question is, are you thinking about a similar measure in Europe? Just one more, and that'll be it.
You have one? That's good.
Merci. Isabelle Boudinot. Moi, je voulais...
Thank you. My name is Isabelle Boudinot. I would like to make a comment. In the morning, it was a huge pleasure to listen to the president of the Committee of the Regions with his political speech. He put aside his technocratic hat, sorry. He took it off. It was nice to listen to him, but we need to think about the budget to know where we stand, to know what resources we have. It's not reasonable to continue thinking we will have, a budget, a growing budget for good. So we have to drop that idea. The reform is inevitable, unavoidable. Today's meeting has proved so. It's important for the Parliament, for the Committee of the Regions to think about that, about our own resources. Right, who wants to have a go?
Oui, je pourrais.
So to answer everything, I just want to come back to this matter of the budget, because the person who was speaking about this, I'm sorry, I cannot remember your first name, who was talking about the budget just being numbers, that it was a bit abstract, perhaps, but nevertheless, I consider that on one side there is the discourses, and on the other side there are acts, and acts in general are supported by financial means or resources. So, we tell people stories, as we were just saying. We make promises that we can't keep. So if there is no money, then we can't keep our promises, and that is very important. And I would like to just tell you very quickly in a minute, these last years about the biannual financial framework, we had forgotten an investment budget of 2014-2020, policies for infrastructure and policies for research, which are the investments for tomorrow, and infrastructure, which are the investments of today. Then, as we did not have sufficient money, we had a budget, a 2-year budget for fighting against youth unemployment. That was not going to be enough. So, in brief, we had a budget which was no longer a budget, which was a kind of tourniquet, where we just went from one cut to another, trying to keep people as happy as possible in this very unhappy state. So, as Corina Cretu has said, we have a cut which was going to be unavoidable. Brexit with, let's say, 12, 15 million less in the coming budget. So if we already have a budget which we have, should we say, squeezed as much as possible, then we have some millions in deficit. You can see clearly the policy which is going to hold it all together is that we're aiming at is the cohesion policy. Of the 5 scenarios, 4 of them reflect that there is a reduction in the budget. And then we have Juncker's speech on Wednesday, and there we will really see what is going to be happening. So we know macro conditionality, that is conditionality based on respecting austerity measures. And now we see the appearance of a whole new series of conditions, which we might be in agreement with. The question of public freedom, of welcoming immigrations, we can all be in agreement with this, but on the condition, here is another little alarm bell that I'm drawing attention to. This must not be a pretext to once again make cuts in the budget and in cohesion, which is why it is so important to understand that the budget is a very, very concrete issue.
Working very well together also. And I very much agree with you that we have to have always in mind that Europe is not Brussels. Europe is the sum of the 500 million citizens in 28 countries still, and we have to fight for improving their life. And this I make the transition to the question coming from the lady of Eastern Germany. I apologize that I don't know the name. But I would like to say that I really admire the administrative capacity of what the Eastern Germany landers made. But I would say that I never heard from a minister from Berlin saying that thanks to the European funds, now these landers are not anymore less developed regions, but they are regions in transition. And we invested a lot in Eastern European landers. As I said in the beginning, I am a big fan of administrative capacity. I know that the budget is important, but I also know that we have many countries for which we have money, and they are expecting in Brussels to meet the criteria, because we have these ex-ante conditionalities and all these things that are not done. So I am very much in favor and exchanges of good practices. As I said, cross-border cooperation. I was very moved in Frankfurt am Oder, I think, with Slubice, between Poland and Germany, to see how people are going now every day in the university in Frankfurt, having dinner, just crossing a bridge done with European money, because I know how many people had died in this border, like between Bratislava and Austria, how many people had died in the Danube, and now you can cross in 15 minutes from one country to another. So I think it's very important to not take for granted what we have. So as I said, administrative capacity is very much important, but also, of course, budget. And the last question, thank you very much for it. I think we are here precisely for fighting for this budget post-2020, because, as I said, I think it's too early to talk about the volume, because we don't know how the negotiations with Brexit will go. But it's our duty to be together, and it's a duty of us, a European Commission, of European Parliament, of Committee of the Regions, of the Council, but also member states. And member states so experienced, like Germany, like Spain, that use these funds for so many years, with so many successful stories, they have to have a louder voice everywhere about the importance of this cohesion policy. In Italy, the same. We have failures, but we have also so many success stories. Everywhere, there is not a region, locality, and the member states that doesn't have a hospital or a university or a high school or a road done by European money. So we have to talk about this. I would like to thank you all for all the support you gave me. I think I consider myself representing you in the European Commission, especially the regions, and you always can count on me. And of course, it will not be easy, but I hope we'll have the power to succeed, and we have a proper cohesion policy, not leaving anybody behind, also after 2020. Thank you once again.
El presidente de la Generalitat ha tomado nota.
Well, the president of the Valencian government took note of that.
Want to add?
Also ich wollte nur
I just want to add something. The person representing the unions in Germany The problem you mentioned is essential, is basic. There's still a lot to be done in that regard, and we do need to be supported by European unions, particularly if we want to avoid a situation which is only focused on salary reductions and one that looks to constrain power in authorities. Of course, we need to regulate all these things, minimum salaries, etc. But as I said, there's still a lot to be done in trying to have the necessary majority in the European Parliament and in the European Council.
On the budget, the only thing I'm saying, I was part of the Italian delegation as minister when we did the discussion and the agreement, the negotiation for the previous budget. The only thing I say, whatever position the Progressive Alliance take it till the end and be credible, because last time that was not the case, and it is a problem. So, of course, I agree in the matter of principles that the money is not enough, but then it has to be done something on which all parties, members of the alliance, stick right from the beginning till the end. There are solutions. One of the solutions of Monti was, half of a point of VAT, rather than being given to the domestic, is given to Europe. That's possible. And countries might be susceptible if you allow them at the same time to, as you write already, to consider the co-financing as excluded from the rules. It could be designed, but whatever you invent in the next 3 months, invent something that you all then stick to, otherwise that will weaken the position of the Progressive in Parliament. And on governance, which I still think is the most important problem, because the money can be as much as we want, but if it is not spent, we do not reach out to the people. Let me clarify. I do not claim that the current regulation is optimal. It's far from optimal, but best is the enemy of good. I claim that any attempt to change it will create more troubles than what it will solve. In the past, it has not simplified things and made things even more complex. And to give to all my old friends, administration of all Europe and citizens of Europe, the chance for once after 25 years not to have learned again for 2 years the new rules, it would be a gift, a fantastic gift. So I'm claiming that no changes except for unifying the funds and the directorate, which doesn't mean to abolish the respective regulations and guidelines. They can be regulations within a fund, and making the point on the decentralization of the audit and control. In my view, these are the 2 steps that would allow the clarification together with the other things I said before. This is just to clarify, we don't have an optimal, but in the past we have created what my friend John Buckler calls a cycle in which the Parliament gets upset about frauds, but administrators don't know what to do, different parts of the Commission gives different interpretation, Member States don't know how to apply them, more frauds take place and more problems in the European Parliament. Let's not fiddle with the rules once again.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your reflection. We have taken us to incorporate your proposals into the declaration, but now we have to continue with the proposal, the final declaration. Thank you very much. One minute. Yeah. ¿Se me escucha? No pasa nada. Ya. Acabamos ya, no se vayan, acabamos ya después de una maratoniana jornada debatiendo.
Please don't go. We're coming to an end after this long day of debate. It's the direction that the European Union must take so that the 27 members are stronger and more solid than ever. And we are going to now pass to the declaration of the final draft, where the proposals and debates have been incorporated, the ones made by our speakers and by our followers online. Isabel Tomás will present the declaration, Vice President of the Socialist Group, and Katiuska representing in the Committee of the Regions. What you see in black is the draft, and our team has added in red the contributions that has been made to this draft. Thank you. After such a very intense day, we're going to be very brief. We had in mind a project declaration, which we have handed out, and which is the synthesis not only of today's work, but above all of the points that we would like to present for the debate, and on which to build a trajectory for the European Union post-20. These are the points that you have in your folder, and on the screen you can see from the previous debate. So I would just like to focus on two fundamental points. The idea of a cohesion policy, that it continues to be a support for all European regions. Point 3, the convergence objective has been progressively broadened to include all the states, not only the most competitive ones, all the regions, taking into account the disparities which have increased. And what we have heard before must make us believe even more firmly in the need to maintain a policy of cohesion for all the European regions, more funds for the cohesion policy. Certainly, on this point, we need to build a financial framework which will take into account the new rules, the political options. But the idea of maintaining a framework of financial resources is very important for the cohesion policy, because it means to continue believing in the role of Europe for investments and growth closer to citizens, and to face the new challenges on a global scale. Then there is another point I would like to highlight, which is this policy of a participatory cohesion policy. Not only as a partnership principle of fully participating in decision-making in cities and communities, and representatives of associations and companies on local territories, but also a participatory cohesion policy, as we have heard from the youngest people today, that it has the sufficient courage to bring to the attention of citizens the options that we want to see attained, and to achieve participation from bottom to top in those decisions. The document is made up of 10 points, which are 10 open points, submitted also to participation, and that we are trying to subscribe by the Socialist Group and at the Committee of the Regions and the European Parliament. Thank you so much, specifically to the speakers and to all those who have participated in the previous session this afternoon. I would like to thank the European Commission and to Professor Barca, who has participated, also Karl-Heinz and Isabel, who have also allowed this dialogue to take place with their very qualified participation. Many thanks. Just one sentence, as Carla has done the whole presentation, just one sentence to thank all of participants and also those who have improved the initial text, and also to say that this participation does not end here today, and we hope that with the Committee of the Regions and all the partners, because the struggle, as I have said, has only just begun. So let us continue to listen to your proposals and build together an improved cohesion policy. Thank you ever so much. We approve the declaration. If you agree, all you need to say so by clapping if we approve. All the speakers, if you would like to upload a photograph, I only have to say that let's sing together in Valencia the Ode and assume the responsibility to take on the great challenges that the European project is facing. We can't think that we can solve this by ourselves. We have to recognize that our societies are still deeply fragmented and that we need social networks. I hope and wish that initiatives such as Europe Together make us reflect on what cannot occur again and on the errors that we cannot afford to make again. This is one step, but the aim cannot be only the following elections. The aim must be a Europe free of inequality, a Europe that is more fused, more joined, that doesn't fear terrorism, that's more working towards ecological action and happy to welcome immigrants into their frontiers. We hope that the image that you take from this community is a region strong in solidarity, open to the future. Thank you very much.
Recuerden que ahora pueden tomar unas cervezas y escuchar música ahí fuera. Gracias por asistir.